Go back to Jill 1 second. Let me go back to his argument. This is what we need to go see. His base elevation in the 100-year flood plan. How did his base elevation change? His base elevation should be changed. Your base is all by that 500. Instead of this being 100 year, we have a base. And now we've added these other things in the 500 year. Where does it have his base elevation? Where does that Where is this? Go down.
So new rules.
What he's saying is,
go back.
So I think what happened is this is so early. That number is not
This is the 1% chance. This is the difference between 100 years and 500 years of water. And right, this is the 100 year plus that is the 200 year. That's this assumption, but here's where in reality, this 18 inches is over here. And this one's going to be upgraded, so this is going to go to 18 inches. So you would be, this is the reality number today. So it'll be about 2 inches. That's about what you have to pay. And if this one goes here, then you got to get 2 feet above that. This is why we're talking about that. This is the new norm for the 500 years. Okay, all right, so that's, we're going to start with the max. Okay, how's everyone doing today?
Good, thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for, everyone ready? Thank you for being here today. We're going to try not to confuse you. I want to be clear what I'm saying is everything I'm saying is subject to some change anyway. There is nothing definite in the city of Houston, okay? But we are going to be talking about these concepts a lot. I'm going to be running advertisements, I'm thinking, on the TV. If your realtor can't speak flood, you need a new realtor, okay? You need to be able to understand the impact of all this. We're going to talk about it in January. We're going to talk about it in February. We're going to talk about it in March. We're going to talk about it in May. We're going to talk about it in June. You're going to know so much about base elevation. You're going to know so much about 1% chance and 2% chance. You're going to know so much about detention and retention. You're not even going to know anything else about how to calculate square footage. This is all we're going to talk about for the year, is some of these concepts. I think it impacts everything we do in real estate throughout our entire city for the rest of this year. And it impacts us for a lot of reasons. We were at a meeting yesterday, and they're going to start throwing out a bunch of these other numbers to solve some of these problems. Okay? Let's just take one base little deal. If the county has a $3 billion bond issue to address flooding, and Metro has a $1 billion bond issue, and the city of Houston has a $1 billion bond issue, and we add $5 billion worth of debt, and there's $5 for every $1,000 of property tax increase. The $200,000 house, their taxes at $200,000 would go up $600 a month. So the average rent house, the average garage apartment that's $1,000 is going to go up, and the average $2,000 bungalow is going to go to $2,600 if we don't capture one extra dime. The average $400,000 house, the tax increase would be $1,200 a month for the tax increase, okay, on a $400,000 house, not to mention an $800,000 house. And we're talking about already people that were paying, $500, $600, $700, $800 a month in taxes. We're talking about a fairly significant tax increase to address some of these issues, which has nothing to do with, just the basic concept of what we're going to be talking about here today. So I want to be really clear. I do not want one house in the city of Houston or Harris County or the surrounding areas to flood. I don't want one house to flood. I'm probably the guy out there pushing it more than anything. But I also don't want to overreact. If we add $20,000 to $30,000 to the cost of a foundation, and we add these property taxes, there is no such thing as affordable housing in our county anymore. I'm telling you, people are going to be driving from Cold Spring to go to be the teacher over here at Harvard Elementary. We've got to be cognizant about how this is going to work. Or I'm just telling you, it can be detrimental to our city. Rich people are going to be the only ones that can afford to live here, and I would say it can be a tremendously important conversation to have all year long. Okay. From now, when you're selling something, you're going to have to understand these concepts and how it is changing continually. We have this mindset in our world that flooding is caused by these rising bayous, and if you're not close to a bayou, you're going to be just fine. We need to quit thinking about that. We need to rename these whole maps and everything, and we need to talk about Enid Street in Brooksmith, okay? Not close to a bayou, you would think pretty high. All of these flooding endeavors are tied to the height of a street, okay? So when a certain amount of rainfall comes, it doesn't matter if you're on a bayou. It's from rising water in a street, not from a bayou, that we need to be most concerned about these days. I want to go to the quantities for a moment. The way our current world works is that we're measuring the amount of water, rainfall, that's in a certain period of time. So the 1% chance of flooding, which is the 100-year floodplain today, is based on an assumption that you're going to get 13 inches of rain in 12 hours in any given area, Channelview, Kingwood, the Heights, okay? That is our current map. The reality of our situation is that we have been averaging 18 inches of rainfall instead of 13 inches of rainfall in a 12-hour period of time. So the current maps are not accurate to begin with, okay? They're just not accurate. We're going to redo these maps, but we're not going to redo these maps. We're not going to get these maps until 2019, okay? They're not going to kick out here next month or anything. And the reality is that instead of 18 inches in the, so this is what we're really getting in the 1% chance of rain. And in the 2% chance of rain, we're averaging about 20 inches of rain in a 12-hour period. Okay?
How many inches?
20 inches is what we're actually averaging in Harris County in a 2% chance of rain. okay? Forget the floodplain anymore. We're just going to talk about 1% chance of rain, 2% chance of rainfall, okay? Which causes rising water from the street. The maps are going to change, okay? We know the maps are going to change. It's going to change how things work, and they're not going to just be tied to these values whatsoever. Now, there is the correlations that you think, well, if it rains for 2 days or 3 days or 4 days, we're doubling and tripling those numbers. The reality is that's not true. If you go to 24 hours, basically, your number sometimes is just incrementally higher. So 48-hour rainfall goes from 20 to 21, 22, 23 because it has a way of flowing and it's getting saturated and it's not the same base. We're going to focus just on 1% chance of rain, 2% chance of rain, which is the basis for the 100-year floodplain, for the 500-year floodplain. And statistically, I don't want to just pay attention to Harvey. I want to focus on some of these others. I mean, even if we go back to 1994, the tax days, or Allison, or some of these sort of things, the numbers were still actually even higher in the shorter period of time. So focus on 1% chance of rain, 2% chance of rain. The current maps today, if we look at the 100-year floodplain, you're going to get to know these little areas just fine, are these areas that are basically in the blue here, right?
This is 100 years ago.
This is the 100-year floodplain of the city of Houston from Kingwood, Lake Houston. You know, you're going to learn all about watersheds. All of these watersheds you're going to be learning about. It's not just the little White Oak and the Addicts and Brays, Greens, all of these sort of things. So all of this water, in theory, water starts to the west, and it's got to get out of here. It's going to the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to sheet this direction. And it's going to hit the Port of Houston, go out to the Gulf of Mexico. All water is designed to go this way. This is how it goes. We always have higher rainfalls here, and then it's just going to go this direction down to the Gulf of Mexico there. So it's got to get from here to here, down to the Gulf, okay? So when you look then at the 500-year floodplain, we're doubling and tripling the size of the geography that are impacted. So you can see certainly all of Bel Air's in the 500-year floodplain, most of West U's in the 500-year floodplain, all these areas up in Cypress, all these areas in West Houston, they're all in the 500-year floodplain today, using rainfall that's 5 to 6 inches below what it actually already is, okay? So the likelihood, if we were just making common sense, do we think the 500-year floodplain map is going to get bigger or smaller? It's going to get a lot bigger. Okay? It's going to get a lot bigger, okay? It's going to get a lot bigger, not a lot smaller. There will be some things that the city of Houston can do to lower the quantity of property in the floodplain, but I don't think any of those fixes are going to kick in 2018 or 2019. You can widen a bayou, which would then maybe reduce some of the houses out of the 500 and put them back down into the 100. You can do some detention things. You can add another reservoir, which might hold more water, which would then reduce some of the quantity of land that's in the 500-year floodplain. But we're not only talking about the 500-year floodplain, we're talking about the entire city of Houston adjusting its code. So if you look at the map of the county and the city, remember that this is the city of Houston. This is the county. Yeah, Fort Bend County and Waller County, Montgomery County. They're doing things also. We're not the only ones doing something. But these areas that have been outside the city of Houston are in, this is called the extraterritorial jurisdiction, and it's governed by Harris County, and they have made changes to their building code as well. We're going to make changes to our building code. The white would be, these are the villages, this is Bel Air, these are other cities, that's why they're not colored blue. But I mean, this is truly the city, this is the extraterritorial jurisdiction. They've already made some adjustments over here. They do not have as strong a building code as we do also in the city of Houston. They've already made changes out here, whether they're in the floodplain or not, to build up higher than they used to. Okay, so you have this house in Cypress over here, and you want to add on your master bedroom bath addition. You're not going to be able to add it at grade. You're going to step up 2 steps and then go to your new master bedroom bath on a slab over there, even in Cypress, even in the lakes of Kickerillo or somewhere way over here. I mean, it doesn't have to be just the city of Houston, okay? So we're talking about the entire area over here, okay? Let's go back to one of our other, wherever we want to start here. I also need for you to kind of understand, we have this problem in building and construction and in these descriptions. We see a survey, and we're looking at this survey, we have some basic assumption that this lot, which is 50 by 132, that it's flat, and it's never flat, okay? It's never going to be flat, and by building code, it can't remain flat. We have a building code that already says you must track all of your water, and you must drain to the street, okay? And you must grade your property at least 1%, okay? So if I have a 132-foot lot, I'm going to have to slope this lot 1%, which means the back of the lot is 13 inches higher than the front of the lot. That's 1%, right? 100-foot, you got 100-foot depth, you're going to be 12 inches, you got, you know, whatever. So your lot is already going to slope like this. So when we go to build a house that's level, and we start talking about the height of a house, and if the base elevation is 24 inches, and you're sloped 13 inches at the back, and the basic house is about 100 feet deep, you must already assume that the back of the house is going to be 36 inches off the base elevation, and the front of it is going to be 24 inches, right? Just because the land's going to slope. So where are you measuring this 24 inches of your finished floor? If it's 24 inches here, it's going to be 36 inches. You know, if it's 24 inches over here, it's going to be 36 inches someplace else, right? Already going to be bigger than you think. It's not just 24 inches. Your slab's going to be solid, but your grade is going to be different. So you've got to start thinking about the natural grade of a property. And where are you measuring it from? You're not measuring from the bottom of your lot. You're measuring from the street, the center of a street. So you have your lot over here. You have to figure out on your street, is your street flat? No, street's not flat. Some streets may be this way, unfortunately, and some are, they're supposed to crown at the top of the center of the street. So you're measuring these heights from the center of the street, not some other deal. So you could be at the center of the street over here, and you go to your base, the first little inch of your lot, and you remember you're sloping up fairly significantly from the back of your lot, okay? It's a little confusing. Everyone got that concept, yes?
Yeah, because the center of the street has a bit of a crown to it.
Supposed to.
Yeah.
Depends on how old the street is, I suppose. But yes, yeah, the street
theory.
That's right. That is the theory. So we're talking about when you go from the 100-year floodplain to the 500-year floodplain, talk about a significant larger portion of houses. Now you're talking about in the entire city of Houston, a foundation must at least be 2 feet now, okay? The 6% of the houses in the county flooded, which means 94% of the houses did not flood. The overwhelming majority of houses that flooded were older houses. Newer houses built since we have the current building code theoretically did not flood. They did not flood in the Memorial Day tax floods. They did not flood in the tax day floods. Now, of course, many of them flooded as a result of the water being released from the reservoir, but that is an odd phenomenon. That was not necessarily a typical rainfall. Jay, do you have a question?
Yeah, I've been hearing that it was 90% of Houston didn't flood, and now is it 94%?
94 is the real number.
Of Houston did not flood. That's good.
Harris County. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm just sorry. Let's go back. This is Harris County numbers. This is 6%.
So it's different for Houston?
That's correct. It is different in Houston. I can get you those exact numbers. They are trying to pull out in the city of Houston numbers the issues impacted by Harvey, which could be wind-driven rain, could be, so Reef had a roof leak and it flooded as a result of a roof leak, but that was not rising water from flood. They had insurance to cover there. So some of those initial numbers were things impacted by the flood. In the numbers of people, so you have an apartment complex that's 12 stories high, you're in Cinco Ranch, you got 12 feet of water. Well, they couldn't move back to the apartment complex because the AC units were flooded. Those people are impacted. They had to move because their apartment complex was ruined, but they didn't necessarily have any water on the 6th floor, 7th floor, 8th floor. So the numbers are a little higher. I'm going to really try and talk about structures, not people, because there is a difference. Okay, so in the city of Houston, we're going to increase the foundation by 1 foot, whether you're in the floodplain or not. This is the proposal. I don't know if this one's going to work right.
2 feet.
It already is 1 foot.
Yeah. Oh, increase.
Yes, we're going to increase by 1 foot, so the basic foundation is going to be 2 feet versus 1 foot, which is what it is now. Okay, we're talking about the entire city of Houston. It's going to have an increase. So you have a house and you built it last year and you're at the, wherever the bottom of where you could be, and you did an addition, it would have to be higher than that. I don't want to get bogged down in all this minutia either, but not only are we talking about proposed changes to construction and additions, we're also talking about detention and retention as impacts the quantity of land in your house. So you're going to have to learn to figure out what impervious cover, when rain falls, what's it hit, and can it go straight down or does it get dispersed some other way? So we have a fair number of people who might want to add a patio. We're in our house, we're going to add a patio. The patio is 15 by 15, or let's just call it 20 by 20 because I can measure that. That's 400 square feet. So your 400 square feet, you could be denied your patio because the amount of property that is now has impervious cover is impacted. So we're going to be talking. Currently, that rule does not impact any of us if the size of your lot is 15,000 square foot or less, okay? Currently. So that's the overwhelming majority of properties are not currently impacted. There is talk about removing that number altogether. Talk about removing the number, making the number smaller. You could go down to 5,000 square foot lots, which would still exempt, the average townhouse and the average lot throughout the city, but it would certainly impact the majority of the Heights lots if they were 50 by 132. And you went to go build a carport, build an awning, not to mention build a garage or a deck or a patio. Pools. A pool's a great example. Now, Westview already has this rule, and I've not done a very good job of explaining. You have a 5,000 square foot lot in Westview. You have a 5,000 square foot house, and the base footprint of the first floor is 2,500 square feet. You got a sidewalk and you've got a driveway, and you see this backyard that looks like this, and you think you can put that swimming pool in the backyard? The answer is no. They have a maximum lot coverage. You're not allowed to build that pool in Westview unless I need to explain that better to you. So that's why we have a lot of these sidewalks that are crushed granite, because they're maximizing the amount of impervious cover that they have, and so they think it's bigger like the house you can, and you put a grass sidewalk or a stepping stone or crushed granite or something. There is impervious concrete these days, and there is True Grid and other materials that you can use for your driveways and for your sidewalks and stuff. We'll try and give another presentation on some of those sort of things and how they work. Everywhere in the city, you're going to have an increase, and I'm fairly confident you're going to have that, okay? I'm fairly confident that the size of the foundation, the height of the foundation is going to rise, because we're going to be able to impact older neighborhoods, not just newer neighborhoods, and certainly their additions and things. Now, the houses that are there are going to be grandfathered, so if you're wherever and this rule kicks in place, it doesn't impact you until you go do some sort of addition or some sort of, you pull a building permit for something. So the entire city has a proposal over here. Then, of course, go back to the 500-year floodplain. We're talking about, instead of forget the 1% rule, the rules would apply in the 500 or the 2% rule. So there would not be a difference between the 100 floodplain and the 500-year floodplain. It would all you assume everything is in the 500-year today, probably going to get more in the 500 than you have now. And you have a new set of rules for the 500-year floodplain, which is an increase of the foundation 2 feet out of the base elevation of the 500-year floodplain. Okay, let's go to Grant's little deal. So if I have the typical house in Meyerland today, and I'm in permitting today, and I'm trying to redo my house, go to the bottom, I'm going to rebuild a house. So I have this survey, and it's telling me currently the 500-year, for the 100-year with a 1% chance deal, the base elevation here is at 49 inches. So I've designed a house that's 2 feet above this base elevation, which is about 4.5 feet higher than the top of the street in Meyerland, okay? I'm in permitting today. This person is in permitting today. And they've got this house. And if the new rule kicks in, and they've used the 500-year base elevation versus the 100-year or 1%, that number goes to 52. So it raises his house by another 2.5 feet. This exact same house, okay, would have to be 2.5 feet higher than he would be if he was in the 1% chance of it flooding, okay? 2.5, so 4.5 feet high, it's going to be 7 feet higher than the top of the street. That's the difference between the 1% or the 2% chance, which of course increases the cost of that house significantly. And it can definitely alter the terrain of a landscape. Let's say you have a certain number of houses and they're built here, and all of a sudden the new houses are built up higher. The landscape is going to change fairly significantly over here in certain neighborhoods. So you're going to have to go figure out when we get these surveys to do the base elevation and calculate the 1% chance, and the 2% chance, or the old 100-year, 500-year version to calculate what the difference is going to be. It's not always going to be this steep, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes it's going to be lower than this. So, new rules, 2 feet out of the 500-year floodplain. The current 500-year floodplain that's fixing to be enlarged significantly. So, year or two, going to be even more properties impacted significantly. Yes, Jim?
Yeah, so this guy that's in permitting, is he gonna get a permit?
Yeah, he's going to get a permit.
He's gonna
These
get a
new
permit.
rules are not in play. They've not been adopted. They're just being discussed. It will be discussed thoroughly in February, would be adopted hopefully sometime in February, probably delayed, I think, beyond that. And then there'd be a 30-day waiting period, and then it would kick in.
Okay, so as a realtor, wouldn't you introduce to him what the new?
Rise
rules are
now,
gonna be?
right? Raise it now.
Right.
A, your flood insurance is going to be significantly higher than if you had raised it. B, you're going to have a harder time selling this house when everyone else is going to be 2 feet higher than you. Which house are you going to really want in Meyerland?
Right.
The higher one or the lower one? I don't think it takes rocket science to figure that
Yeah,
out.
but I mean, when you're talking about significant cost, the significant cost really pales when you're doing it from the get-go rather than
Well, that's
trying to raise it 2.5 feet.
There's
4
plenty of
years
people that are not going to want this. There'll be plenty of people in Meyerland that think it's too high. There'll be plenty of development people that think it's too expensive. We've added too much. There are going to be plenty of people that say we're overreacting. We already have a strong development code. Most of those houses didn't flood that were already raised to the 100. So my argument to that, and I'm not leading this charge, although I am in favor of increasing the regulations. The current rainfall at 18 inches for the 12 hours. Do we think the 18-inch number is going to get bigger or smaller?
Bigger.
It's going to get bigger. So we have to plan. The city must assume that climate change is real, and we're going to have increased quantity of rain, not a flat line of the quantity of rain. That is the classic argument. There are going to be some people that said in 1900 it rained that much. Maybe so, but I'm still going to make the assumption that the Gulf of Mexico is going to get warmer before we have a lot of icebergs forming across the world. I think we're going to have less icebergs, not more icebergs. So that's kind of, you're making this assumption that you're doing something not only for today, based on the information behind this, that you must prepare for the future. A more resilient city prepares for the future, not just for today. That's going to be the argument. We'll see who wins. Yes, Mark?
So on the number that you had for your current 500-year floodplain.
Yes.
Okay.
making the assumption that the 500-year floodplain is going to get larger.
Yes, it is gonna
As
get,
it, as it gets larger, if you're at the same spot and the floodplain, that number should rise.
that's correct, it is gonna rise.
So anybody who's building.
It's going to rise, not because necessarily the quantity of land,
No, no.
because the quantity of water
Correct.
that they're using to calculate the 100-year floodplain is incorrect by about 33%.
Right.
So the quantity of water is going to be higher, which means the day salvation is going to get higher.
Right, so the same thing is true for the 500-year floodplain.
Absolutely.
And so anybody who is building today, taking into account the
2%.
24 inches
Mhm.
for the 500-year, 2 years from now, may find themselves out of compliance because the new number is going to be higher and that 2 feet is no longer there.
That's correct. You must hope that we're going to do something to reduce some of that 2% rise by addressing, by addressing the bayous, the reservoirs. You can, deepen the Addicks and the Barker Reservoir. You can add another reservoir. You can widen the channels. You can do a few of those other things, which could help this number from continually to rise and rise and rise and rise. At some point, we can't have 16-foot, Galveston houses in the middle of Ireland. You're going to do some other things to adjust that number. And there are things that can be done to adjust the number. It's not going to be done in the next year.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Jim.
Yeah, so the 1 feet, 2 feet,
1%, 2%.
yes.
1%,
So-
0.2%.
Okay, so the guys.
It's a 1% chance of that happening in any given year.
On the 100.
And 2% chance of it happening.
0.2. 500 is point. It's not more than 100. It's less than 100. It's a 0.2.
0.2.
Okay, so what I was talking about is the 1 foot, 2 foot that the city's
Okay,
trying to do.
yes,
So
yes.
the scenario is, before there was a 1 foot, there
That's
was a no foot. So those people on slabs, now they're competing against houses 1 foot higher, and now they're gonna compete against houses that are 2 feet higher.
Yes.
So where does that, like, if you're to have a house that has on a slab versus a house that's on a 2 foot higher slab, when it rains hard, where do you think that water's going?
So let's be clear about that. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Let's just say you're in, Cypress somewhere over there again, or a 50-year-old subdivision. Let's say Oak Forest. Let's say your Oak Forest house and your next door neighbor, Terry Johnson's house, he's going to build his new house. He is not allowed to raise his lot you cannot infill and raise your lot by 2 feet, adversely impacting the drainage of the house next door to you. So the lots are going to still be the same. This house is going to be higher than this one, which could be at 0 or 1 foot, and this one's going to be 2 foot. Ideally, they're pier and beam or something, and the water can then flow to the street. But just because this house is higher doesn't mean that you're going to flood this house. The lots are the same.
Who inspects that? Because I've been to several houses where the lots are not the same size.
Well, I'm just saying, the new rule would not allow. Currently, the rule allows for you to infill, it's called, and raise your lot, which is adversely impacting your next door neighbor. Yes, in the new proposals, you would not be allowed to infill in order to raise your.
But then if you're meeting your 13 inches in the back and you talk about this
Mhm.
132 lot, how are you going to meet that if you've already got 2 feet low on the back? Because it used to drain to the alley.
If you get a building permit and you increase the size of your house by 50%, or you create a new structure, a garage and garage apartment, you would be required to raise your lot.
So then we have to infill, then the back is going to look like this. Because if you've got a drain to the alley that's never been renovated, right?
Yes. If your lot
So
used
there's
to.
still issues even.
Well, the deal is your rainfall is going to come in and it's going to drain to the front of the street. So it would have gotten on your lot and run over to your next door neighbors or into the alley. Your water's not going to drain to the alley anymore. It's going to drain here and go somewhere to the front of the street. So you didn't adversely impact the drainage of the alley. You used to drain to the alley, adding water to the alley. Now you're no longer adding any water to the alley. I'm not saying the alley doesn't have water, because water rained on the alley, but your water is going to the front of the street. So you didn't adversely impact the drainage of any person.
Except that it used to be spread across 3 houses. Now two go up, the middle one doesn't, and he gets a puddle.
The middle one needs to address his own water, but your water is not going onto that person's property, so you did not
So if you
adversely
have a
impact.
client that has a new construction next door that has a puddle, you probably don't want to tell them we might need to get this graded.
Yes, they're gonna need to address their drainage issue, but the key is from the city, the new guy did not adversely impact this guy, because his water didn't touch that guy. I captured all my water and put it to the street. So this guy didn't flood as a result of this guy. Not saying he didn't flood before.
I know, but where does the alley water go? Right, so back in the day, it went to the alley, then it went to one of the cross streets. Right?
Yes,
So if two go up, the middle guy, it used to just all flow that way.
He's
Okay.
still flowing to the alley the way it used to.
But it may not have gone directly into the alley, and they, you know, what I mean, so you're saying it goes into that 16-foot alley or whatever that is.
50.
But it might actually be more like 25 feet, and everybody's backyard's flooded and it goes to the alley. Right?
Yeah, theoretically, if some of that water drained onto an adjoining property in order to go someplace else, that's no longer gonna be the rule. Yes, the rule is your water's gonna stay on your own property and you drain to the
So
street.
now that person that's in the middle or next to a new construction, they're gonna start having pooling, so you probably.
They could potentially have pooling, but I don't think they had any more pooling than they had before.
But water flows, so now it has nowhere to flow.
Yes,
So.
I'm not denying it. I mean, I'm not saying what you're saying is not true, but yes. They can't hold this guy accountable because they flooded before, and they used to, instead of flooding, they drained onto someone else's property to not flood, and now they're not gonna be able to drain onto someone else's property.
Yeah.
You're really talking about French, like putting it in French drains or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, you raise the soil or whatever.
So,
Yep,
back to this impervious cover thing.
okay.
Is building pier and beam going to be affected less than,
No, because it still, as the rainfall drops, it's not, they're not giving you credit for the water being able to flow underneath your house. It does maybe flow underneath your house, but no, the impervious cover thing is not, it's still gonna be when the water drops. If you hit a roof, that, they're gonna count that. They're not gonna give you credit for pier and beam versus slab. There is, I mean, City of Bel Air requires a pier and beam. There are discussions, but that is, who knows where that's gonna pan out. I don't know where it's gonna pan out.
Is it likelier for residential that you'll just get a fee for like under 15,000 square foot lots, just a fee?
It's possible.
Probably,
It's
right?
possible. It's possible.
so then what about the detention issue?
So it's unclear. So here's what we know for sure. Above 15,000 square feet, there's going to be changes. We know that. Below 15,000, I don't know. It's still a gray area. So let's pretend I have Gano Street for sale today on the MLS. It's a parking lot over there on the near north side, and I'm selling it. And we did mark it. It's a parking lot. The whole thing is paved today. So the way the current rule works is 0 detention is required for that tract of land because it's already 100% pervious, right? I mean, it's already covered. No matter what you do, it's not going to be worse than what we have right now. Okay, so they almost want you to build 12 townhomes because you're going to get some blade of grass somewhere, which is better than what we have. Okay, so the current properties like that, they're totally exempted. They will no longer be exempted. Okay, you'd have to, when you redevelop Gano Street, no matter what you're going to do, you're going to meet the new detention requirements when you redevelop it totally. Okay, so that's example one. We know that that's changing. I'm positive that's going to change. Let's say you have C&D Hardware. You got a parking lot over there, and you want to repave your parking lot. Currently, you're grandfathered. Okay. Now you're no longer going to be grandfathered if you, in the proposal, and I'm pretty sure it's going to pass, if you do more than 50% of the quantity of your tract, then you're going to have to meet all the new detention requirements, okay? So pretty sure the 50% rule is going to kick in. That's not that controversial, okay? If you redo your parking lot by 50%, you scrape your parking lot, you're going to have to put in French drains and detention. You're going to meet the new detention and retention requirements, which we're going to explain at another meeting because it gets thoroughly confusing what that really even means. Here's where it's been getting us. Memorial City Mall wants to take Whataburger and tear down Whataburger and put Chick-fil-A. And it's half an acre of a 35-acre tract of land, okay? Just follow me for just 1 second. We had changed the rule that said, no, you do that, you need to create detention for Memorial City Mall, which was built before 1990, so it had no detention whatsoever at Memorial City Mall. It was a way to make us go make Memorial City Mall do the detention requirements to meet today's standard. There was such backlash over this. I mean, it has been totally controversial. That just, I mean, you've added, when you redo the cost of that Chick-fil-A and it's $1 million, you're adding $5 million worth of detention to Memorial City Mall. And it doesn't sound like that one's going to work too well. So you're going to have to just add detention for the percentage of what it is that you just did. So if you do a half acre, you're going to have to do detention for the new Chick-fil-A. Okay? Here's where it's been getting us. Herman Park, wants to redo a basketball court under the old, under the proposal, do the basketball court, they'd have to do detention for all of Memorial Park or Herman Park. It seems a little odd to do 900 acres over there if you could do that. Hamilton Elementary here is redoing the Spark Park. They go and redo a Spark Park and they replace a basketball court again. The rule was, Hamilton did not have any detention requirement. Whatever. Which one? What's right here? What's that junior high right there? Hog right there. They go and redo a basketball court, then the rule was they have to kick it. I have been in so many meetings this last year over how we're going to make them do. But yeah, you do we add a soccer field at an elementary school that's never been there. They have, have to do detention for the soccer field because they've never had detention for that school, which is flooding its neighbors because it doesn't have detention. It doesn't meet today's guidelines or whatever. So we're working our way through there. But whatever portion you're redoing, you're going to get to do detention for that. You do a soccer field, you do a football field, you add a running track around Reagan High School's deal, you're going to get the chance to meet the new detention requirements for all of that area. You re-roof the gymnasium, you're not going to have to redo the detention if you re-roof the gymnasium, okay? If you didn't change the impervious cover one bit there. You do something outside of that, and yeah, we're redoing all these basketball courts with new material. They're forced to do detention for those areas at Travis Elementary, Reagan, Harvard, all these elementary schools, all these people. So you tear down your tennis court and you re-put back something, you're going to do detention on your house in Memorial.
Where are they going to find that?
Where are they going to find what?
The detention area.
They can hold the water. I mean, you can hold.
I know, but where? So if
you can hold it underground.
You can. So where do they find a detention?
I think what you're soon going to find is every house in the city is going to have gutters, and your gutters are going to be tied into the sewer system immediately so that the water doesn't overflow into some place.
So they don't make a pond, it's not a detention pond?
There are different ways that you can accomplish it.
Or pay fees.
So my lot is 16,000 square feet. When I tried to permit my pool early last year, because I have to meet, I'm over 15,000, the additional cost for my swimming pool, the 24-inch drains I must put in my backyard that must connect to the city sewer system, added about $40,000 to the cost of my swimming pool when I got the initial estimates, just to meet that deal. So it's easier for me, because we've done it in another house. The size of my swimming pool is pretty damn big. It's 20 feet across and 60 feet. To adjacent to that, go underground, hold a storage tank the size of this building underground in my house, hold that water, use that water to irrigate my property. It still cost me the same $40,000.
But you saved water.
But I saved the water bill that way. Yeah. So
like Harvard could put that under their soccer.
Sure they could. Sure they can. So we know that detention requirement about 15,000 is going to happen. We know in the spaces when you replace something, it's going to kick in. We know that that's going to happen. It led me to whatever you said to the next deal. What we didn't. Another thing that it'll come back to me in a second. Yes.
What's the difference between letting it just flow to the street and into storage?
The streets don't have enough. We don't have enough capacity in our streets to hold that much water. So here's the problem. We're building these streets to hold the 1% drain, the 100-year
When it goes
floodplain.
into the storm
But the
drain.
drain
it goes
itself only has 25% capacity of what the street has.
Mhm.
So when the drain fills, so I'm gonna take my gallon of water and I'm gonna pour it into my cup of water, and what is gonna happen to all the rest of the water? It's going to rise in the street because the drain can't
Wouldn't it
accommodate
be
that.
cheaper to redo a drain
If so-
system in the street?
Cynthia, I can.
Add
So I-
$40,000 to your pool?
So here's the deal. It costs 4 times more to do the street that way. So I can build 1/4 the number of streets in the city of Houston the right way, or I can build 4 times more street where the street's new, but the drainage doesn't meet. Do you want to build 4 times or 1/4 the amount of streets? This is where we've been as a
I don't
city.
want potholes.
You're gonna fix your potholes. Potholes are a Band-Aid. So they just have it, you will cut the amount of money that you have for streets by 25%.
What about what you're losing in tax
Well,
revenue? Because now someone.
So we
like
can
you
pass the
can't
cost
build
on to the homeowners by making them raise.
But so now your home's worth less because you can't really build a pool in all that empty space. And
I get exactly what you're saying. Here, so Cynthia, I'm gonna come to you and I'm saying, I need $1 billion to solve your problem. And you're gonna say, I already pay a drainage fee. I already paid a large water bill. What was my drainage fee for? What was rebuild about? And I'm gonna be in a lawsuit over it because you pay a drainage fee to deal with that. And I don't know that we have the stomach to go back to the homeowners and ask for another $1 billion to fix that when we haven't had a long enough time to rebuild Houston. I'm all for fixing it. It's a big city, 676 square miles. So if I add $1 billion over there, where am I going to start with the roads? I mean, I want to fix them. I do. I'm not disagreeing, but there are a couple of things that, I mean, yes, fix the drainage in the streets of all new roads. You can definitely do that and reduce the amount of roads that you're going to build and do some other things. But you're going to have to do something else because you wouldn't be able to build the drainage system quick enough for it to make any difference in the next 20 years.
so you couldn't, instead of having to do that around your pool or build a humongous tank under your house, you couldn't, like, instead they pay to enlarge the drain in front of their property?
You could. Sure you could. Sure you could.
Would that not be
You
like?
could.
No, because then it still has
Yeah,
to meet the same water bill.
Yeah.
Depends on how well the drainage system works. I mean, the drains are not designed today to hold the 1% rainfall in 12 hours.
And you only fix it in a certain period of time, so if you make the drain bigger here, and
Right.
it gets to a point where it has to go to a smaller thing, it's still gonna go.
We
That's right,
could,
that's
in
right.
Montrose, we could feel the values filling up because 3 times the water came up in the street and then when it stopped raining. each time
Many,
it took
many,
longer
many
to rain.
houses, wherever I've been to this experience, and
Redoing the draining and then just sending it underground to go empty and the sewer system doesn't fix that.
You're right.
it doesn't fix it 100%, no. It's just,
You're just putting it in the same drain a different way. So then I understood you say that's not the issue, it's the size of the hole getting into the drain. So if, for what you're talking about, it's all the same water, it's just a matter of how it's getting there, whether it drains from the yard into the street or you do these drains that drain into the drain, it's still the same problem.
we have a drainage problem. So all we can do is design the streets to hold the water until it can recede. That's what, so the drainage system has never been designed to channel ever water so that there's not water on the street. It's supposed to hold the water in the street until it can go through the drainage system. So what we must do is recognize that the street is not large enough to hold all the water that we're actually really getting by the drain. So you got to raise the houses up higher. So knowing that the water is going to go into the grassy area on your property where it can drain some there to lower the quantity that's on the street. We know the water is going to go in people's yards.
And that's the difference between detention and retention. We're going to have a whole separate set of retention requirements.
That's right. Right. So, but yeah, it's a problem. I'm not disagreeing that there's a problem. But we know that what we're doing is, taking this street water and putting it on the public right of way, the area between the sidewalk, and some of it is going to go into these yards. We just know it's going to happen. So the only responsible thing to do is raise the house so that the water, when it sits in the yard, is not in people's houses. Yes, Brendan?
So I guess for our takeaway as realtors, when we show these properties and there's space between the house and the garage, and you say, oh, you can put a pool here.
You got to be careful about what you say. Yeah. You must say it right, but you're going to have to we have maximum lot coverage in much of the city, and we're going to have more. They're going to increase the way that that works, and that we have an impervious
Look at these
rules.
restrictions and
That's
they're
right. And
probably going to change.
there you have it. That's exactly what you have to say.
Places that was on certain lots.
We don't know. Currently it's at 15,000, but it could go down as low as 5,000. Or it could be, one of the recommendations was make it go away and make everyone. So you just don't know politically how it's going to go. When the developers say you're passing all the costs on to the big developers, they're going to say, well, why don't you do it everywhere and see how the world likes it, to see if the little guy will bitch enough.
So you're just talking theory right now.
Well, I know that they're going to make an adjustment because the 15,000 square foot rule hasn't worked. It just hadn't worked. So, yes, you can't
These
assume.
listings don't be can put a pool.
That's
back
right.
here.
Room for a pool. We're going to need to be very careful what that means, because you could be advertising room for a pool and they not grant you a permit because you don't have enough impervious cover. Yes.
But that's only on lots 15,000.
Well, I'm just saying that the rule's going to change.
But there is still room for a pool, it just might be more costly.
No, they would not allow you to have. You'd have a maximum lot coverage, and so you wouldn't be able to build anything. You can't cover your.
Even if you can retain.
So the lot size is below that 15,000 square feet, and you tell them, look, this is, currently it's fine, but it's probably going, as long as you let them know this, if you're planning to do this, it possibly could change.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, but.
Other cities do the same
rules, they
thing.
could.
I mean, the current rules you could, the rules are subject to change. All rules are subject to change.
Right.
Most likely going to change.
Room for a pool today.
That's right. Yeah.
Do it.
They have their own city.
Okay, but hypothetically.
Okay.
You're out in an area that had fairly deep water, and so 5 feet of water.
As a result of the release of the reservoirs.
Okay, and Becky was texting and asking about her house on, listing on Warrington that had 8 feet of water.
As a result of the flood from the reservoir.
Okay, so that's a different thing entirely? Okay.
It's a whole different ballgame. You know, if you adjusted the reservoir, you wouldn't have the same problem there.
Okay.
They're not gonna base the flood level on what happened.
On the release.
Okay.
That's right. Interesting story about the release, because all the lawsuits or whatever. Basically, the release was, the decision was, if we release the water, we know where the water is going to go. We know the houses and the subdivisions that will flood as a result of the release. If the dams had overflown, we did not know where the water was go. It was totally unknown, so it was totally unmanageable what was going to happen. So the basic release decision, it's going to, the water's going to go over. Is it going to go over where? And so they could determine where by the release.
So it could save lives.
Well, yeah, they should have done it at 3 in the morning. They should have, there were other things they probably could have done. But yeah, it was at least managed release versus unmanaged release or whatever. Okay, what else do we have on our slides that we wanted to go over? Make sure I cover
I guess
everything.
that's pretty much it.
So go back to that one little deal. I mean, these are the watersheds and the bayous and things that are impacted. I mean, you can basically tell there's no area in our geography that's not impacted by these.
And that does matter more, Mark, is the watershed you're in is going to determine your flood level over what happened last August.
Yeah.
And so that's really what it'll be based on.
Okay, what else was on our list here? Just seeing.
So I have a question. If, what's it called? GHBA didn't really, if they were fine with the Harris County changes, how are they going to feel about these city changes?
They're going to feel like it's too much. They're going to feel like we're overreacting too quickly because there's going to be other changes to the city from the feds and from the state. And so we shouldn't increase the cost of housing this much so quickly until we know what's going to happen on the rest of the world. I think we're going to get some money and you're going to get some bayou projects. I think you're going to lower you're going to dredge the Barker and the Cypress and Addicks dams. I think you've probably got a very good chance of getting another reservoir, which still has nothing to do if you get 18 inches of rainfall on Redan over here, and Redan is a low street. I don't really care what you do in the reservoir. The reservoir only impacts me if I have an Allison type event or about a Harvey type event, we have to prepare for rainfall increasing not tied to a Harvey or an Allison, especially in older subdivisions.
How do you see the change in the elevation requirements affecting the proposed guidelines for the historic districts?
I think the size, the foundation height is going to go up. I think their 32 inches is a joke.
Yeah. They're illegal.
So,
I've been telling them that before this came out, but.
so you're also predicting possibly that all new construction in Harris, inside the city in Harris County is all gonna be on a pier and beam.
I'm going to suggest to you that that is a consideration we should look. Yes, I think it's going to a pier and beam. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Not, you know, I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
it is the rule in the city of Bel Air.
But it's an easier solution for builders to deal with.
It's just a function of cost.
What is the cost difference? for-
5 to 7%,
Okay.
depending on how wide and how tall it is. 5 to 7% increase is what you're looking at.
What do we
Pier and
think
beam.
Laura's gonna say?
Pier and beam is more expensive than a slab.
You're going down, doing these bottom piers, it's about 5 to 7% more. We have always done it because we needed the 24-inch. So our building, our deed restrictions in the heights do not require pier and beam. They just require you to be 24 inches. It just looks silly to have a 24-inch slab, right? And really, you're gonna have 36 inches exposed in some areas if you have 24
The
inches.
new house, Brick Moon on North Hill and Bayland, I think that's slab, right? It's like,
More hill and
right here in the corner.
Yes, it's this.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yep.
And that's cheaper than digging.
The slab, yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah. Okay, so we know, so we're gonna kick you out, we'll email you this sort of deal here, which is just kind of the summary of these changes. It is subject to change. There'll be some horse trading going on over here, but we know that something is going to change.
What do you think Laura's gonna say?
What do I think Harsh? Because we have a meeting about it. I think in general, Har is going to say the 24 inches above the 100-year is fine, and the 24 inches in the city. I think they're going to say 24 inches above the 500-year is too costly, and we should probably wait and see what happens. I think they'll be somewhere in the middle.
So going back to this impervious cover thing, in our historic guidelines, they want us to go back to 100%.
I sent them an email today to see if 1208 Tulane even met the criteria of maximum lot coverage. Let's see what they say.
So it would make more sense to go up and have less pervious cover.
From a drainage standpoint, yes. From a historical standpoint, no.
Well, I don't mind. Well, we know that, but.
Okay. Any questions about this? No? We got it? Changes are coming.
Yeah.
Probably good. What else do we have to talk about? Do you want to put the
So we'll
45
have our
stuff up?
Jim Blackburn.
Oh, yes, this Jim Blackburn. Okay. So we have this 2 weeks from today. We have rented again the Sunset Coffee Building. This is Jim Blackburn. He is among the foremost flooding experts in the counties with Rice. He's with the Kinder Institute. He's going to give us our own presentation. I'm in these presentations all the time. So we're not going to say that I'm 100% supportive of everything that he has to say. I mean, he's probably all the way to the left on transparency. They want the most amount of money. But he's an advocate for changes. He's an advocate for addressing some of the issues related to flooding. He's basically been talking about the storm surge, for 10 years. He's been talking about the reservoirs for 10 years. He's been talking about the Katy Prairie for 10 years. He doesn't get to, most of what he talks about relates to the county, not necessarily to the city, some to the federal, some to the state, some to the county. He's not a city expert. He's definitely an expert. You'll be able to ask any sort of questions that you want. We were in a debate with them yesterday on the bond issue, which is a county bond issue, whether it should kick out in May or June, or whether it should be November, or whether it should be 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion. Should the language be generic so that you can do the most amount of projects, but that's like giving county commissioners a blank check, or should it be specific? If you specifically put a bond issue and say, $400 million for a new reservoir, does that mean the federal government then is not going to give us any money for the reservoir, and the state won't give us the $400 million from the rainy day fund? So you have to be careful about how you discuss this sort of stuff politically. But he's very interesting. You can invite anyone you want. I would expect a full crowd wherever he speaks. They're lined out the door. He spoke at the Chronicle the other day. There were 600 people on a waiting list to get there in the auditorium. So this is 2 weeks from today. Sunset Coffee Building. We'll be promoting it. He's a great expert. And I think that's really, really good that he's coming to speak to us individually. So
Yes, that's a real school.
a good deal.
And then we still have our thing next week at Charter Title.
We have the State of the Market. Yeah, that's next Tuesday. Next Thursday, February 8th. It's at Charter Title where we had our annual meeting. This is my State of the Market, kind of 2018. I don't have to repeat Ted Jones or what it is that they have to say. So I'm going to try and make it a little more specific about certain areas of town, how these sort of things might impact construction costs, with some specifics. I'll be related to more of these sort of things. I think overall we know that people are optimistic about the general economy in 2018, and I do believe that we have a housing shortage. We're just going to try and prove to that use statistically what does that mean with new construction townhouses over 500,000 in Area 9 or Area 16 or Area 17 or 23. So we're going to try and be fairly specific on some of our comments that we make. But yeah, so those two things are very interesting. You have the little 45 map to put up or not?
The 45 map. Oh,
From Bob
no, I
Harvey?
don't have that up. No.
You don't have it up?
Let me see. Bob Yuri sent it yesterday.
This is just an interesting conversation we'll be having all year also, which has to do with the North Houston Highway Improvement Project, which is basically the $7 billion tied to the I-45 expansion. I have now been appointed to this little task force with some brilliant minds or whatever. So we know that 45, as it comes from the others, 610 and the airport, you're coming here. This is North Main here. It will come, it will no longer go around this side of I-45 of downtown. It will route, follow I-10, and then it will go this direction. 69 and 45 will go on here. Here's the George R. Brown and Discovery Green. So here are all these opportunities. This is $7 billion starting down here at 288 and OST working its way upward. We know a couple of things. We know the project's happening. I mean, the $3 billion has already been allocated. You can't get $3 billion into it and stop. So they haven't allocated the other $7 billion, but it is basically an approved project. We know that 45 is not going to go this direction. You will be able to come and take an exit, and you'll still be able to go to Allen Parkway, and you'll still be able to go to McKinney. You'll still be able to get here to Dallas, okay? All this Pierce elevated, which is elevated up here where you come up and you're crossing over by St. Joseph's Hospital and 2016 Main and all that, that's not going to be there. It's just not going to be there. And the chance of it becoming the High Line and an elevated park is next to nothing. So let's just get off of that. I mean, the chance of that happening is literally nowhere. And then I think part of the concept of this deal is it's changing the landscape of the city, and you're trying to address social issues equally as much as you are transportation issues, okay? These are social projects. When you create all these divisions, you're dividing neighborhoods, and now we're consciously going to use federal, state, local dollars to address the divisions between communities, okay? Yeah. So we know that 45 and 69, 59 is going to go underground lower than the street level at George R. Brown. We know it. It's gonna go down there, which gives an opportunity at grade where the street is, or the interstate's going to be way underneath the road there, for us to connect back these areas that have been disconnected by these high highways, okay? So it gives us an opportunity to create green space, deck parks as such, here on the other side of the George R. Brown, connecting these areas, pedestrian and some streets. I'm not saying there wouldn't be streets at grade. Not going to be 30 feet high up in the air. You're going to go underground with 45, underground with 59, and a transit lane in between there, creating an opportunity for green space here. Okay? We know that. There is no money for this green space. They will do the infrastructure, they will do the engineering, they will design it such, but it would require someone else to pay for the park here.
Non-appropriated.
It's unappropriated from the state of Texas.
Yeah.
We know that when you come around here and you create this sort of deal, that all of these Clayton homes, and it's a housing project, it's a low-income housing project from the 70s and 80s, will be destroyed. It's going to go away, and all of this is shifting, which creates a whole new neighborhood at this area that's no longer there. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. We know that Buffalo Bayou will connect over here, and it will give us an opportunity to make greater connections for parking, green space on the other side of this Sunset Coffee building that we're going to the other day. As we come up here, here are proposed deck parks at North Main. 45 goes down. You would be able to connect where Hollywood Cemetery is, over across the interstate, back closer to even where I live. These would all be new parks at grade, while the interstate goes down below here, trying to connect what is Moody Park, Woodland Park, this area over here with hike and bike trails, connecting Brooksmith and Woodland Heights back over to the near north side, making it where you could walk. These are all, what this looks like, we don't know. There would be coffee shops, there'd be bike rental, there'd be exhibit halls, there'd be opportunity for music and arts and all sorts of stuff here. So this is a deck park, unfunded, probably gonna happen. Here's a deck park, unfunded, but probably gonna happen. Here's these, the goal is to take this section of the world, downtownish, and connect it more with Midtown and with the medical center. This is the innovation corridor that we've been discussing. This is the highest concentration of density. This is the highest concentration of light rail, getting people access to the med center, through Midtown, through downtown, and back in these areas. So here's Freedman Town, where all that Pierce Elliott is. It will go down, and you'll be able to connect these areas in a more pedestrian friendly. So I know that's going on, but this will stay up. This will be the last part to go away because we need to have access here while all this is under construction. So this little section will come first. There will likely be some type of bond issue that the city would put up, not next year, not the next year, but maybe the next year, whatever, addressing this sort of green corridor all in this section. So there's all these little areas and lots of people participating in what's going on. But it's pretty exciting. I think 10 years from now, you will not recognize the city. It'll be totally, totally different the way it will look and grow. I want to just remind you, just interesting enough, this little section of downtown, by city code, since 1999, has 0 parking regulations. You are not required to have 1 parking spot. I can build a 99-story building and I don't have to put in parking. The market has driven where the parking is. Do we think that the Marriott Marquis has enough parking? Well, sure it is, because no one's going to go to the Marriott Marquis if they don't put in enough parking. Same with the Wortham Theater, and same with the Alley Theater, and same with, Oxbow 7, and whatever the restaurant or bar, Oprah Bar, or whatever it is that you're going to over here. We will next have this proposal that we extend this no parking all the way from what is basically the Pierce Elevator to McGowan Street to where the Sears is at 59 now. Okay, we'll see what backlash we get. That this proposal will kick out in March, and there'll be some backlash because people won't understand it. There's been no parking right here in the busiest section of downtown for almost 20 years. Surely we can expand it a little bit more over here, and someday it'll expand all the way to the Med Center. I'm fairly confident. It's the first of the Uber effect, I'm going to call it. It's changing the way we think about parking. Do not want to adversely impact residential neighborhoods. This is not high residential. What is, some townhouses in that area. We're not talking about cars being flooded over into the middle of Southampton over here, but I'm just going, you're going to see a change, which is an initial opportunity for us to pilot how parking works in the city. So that's going to be coming out also, one of our recommendations, pretty quickly. Yes, Allison?
What could possibly go wrong with submerging a freeway?
They do have a drainage plan. They have a drainage plan, I promise you
But
that
they
they
don't
do.
have the drains in place, so they're.
They will.
they're
With $7 billion.
Outside of the city in a hurricane. And this is.
It is. I will tell you that 45 at North Main is shit right now. There is nothing they can do that would be any worse than what they have now. They assure me that they have a drainage plan. Yeah.
Oh, and just kind of on a traffic situation, there's a secret, because they're not publicizing, meeting tonight, people who live in Woodland Heights.
Over
about
what?
the speed bumps that, anyway.
I wasn't invited because they know I'm not a fan of speed bumps. They want more speed bumps?
Have done nothing for the
Do they want more speed bumps?
They say we do have a problem, though, their post-count dates were less than 48 hours.
Okay, questions about North Houston Highway Improvement Project?
So you said it's too far to turn back, so there's not gonna be a vote on whether the city likes this plan?
Yeah. No, there've been votes for like 4 and 5 years going on here. There's still some tweaking going on, but no, I don't, and there'll be a few more they have made significant adjustments after every meeting. It's like my neighbor, Jim Weston's been working on this for 15 years, right? We are helping neighborhoods, not hurting neighborhoods.
Oh, I think it would be a phenomenal look to the city. I just think it traps people. I don't think there's no way there's just no way that you can submerge, something in Houston. It's the reason we don't have basements. It's the reason that we got rid of the tunnel in the ship channel. You can't
It's
submerge.
submarine doors in the med center.
Huh?
It's submarine doors in the med center.
Works just fine.
Well, I don't know.
It's better than putting an interstate way high up. Soon we're gonna have flying cars anyway, so we won't need all these streets.
Until we get there, maybe we should. We raised the airways for a reason. Houston, downtown flooded.
We're not, I don't want that anymore. We tried that test.
Downtown flooded in Harvey, right?
Downtown flooded in Harvey, yes.
Only by
Because we don't have a reservoir. If the reservoirs had been dredged in Barker and Addicts, then we wouldn't have flooded downtown. You add another reservoir. Okay, this is coming out. Any other questions, comments? This all good? All right.
Right.
Okay, thank you all.
Yes,
Yes, sir.